Welcome to the channel, I'm Hayes. I talk movies all day, so subscribe right now if you want to be entertained. And today, I want to talk about Lalo Schifrin. So here's the thing, a little bit ago I did a video on Mission Impossible, and in that video I said that if you've never heard of Lalo Schifrin, you've got some homework to do. Then it occurred to me, why not help you with that homework and make a video talking about the life of Lalo Schifrin? And who knows, maybe this could become a series of videos talking about people you should know. So here goes. Let's talk about the legendary Lalo Schifrin. It all started on the 21st of June 1932 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, when Boris Claudio Schifrin entered the world. His father, Louis Schifrin, was a musician that played violin with the Buenos Aires Philharmonic. His mother, Clara Schifrin, may or may not have been a musician, but did herself come from a musical family. In any case, little Lalo grew up around music and began learning to play piano at 5 or 6 years old under the tutelage of Enrique Baron Boehm, a friend of his father. By the way, if you're wondering where the name Lalo came from, it's actually a common way of shortening Claudio in Argentina, kinda like how Bob is used for Robert. Basically, Lalo was actually his nickname, but when moving to the United States in 1958, he legally changed his name to Lalo to avoid confusion issues with contracts. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, cause way before that, as a young aspiring musician, Lalo learned to play classical and studied with Andrea Carolin, a former head of the Kiev Conservatory, and also Juan Carlos Paz, a prominent Argentinian composer and musical theorist. But while Lalo was trained in classical, he eventually took more of an interest in another type of classical, jazz, with people like Louis Armstrong, Charlie Parker, Fats Waller and Dizzy Gillespie being amongst his inspirations. Now that might not sound like anything too out of the ordinary, but here's the thing. In 1946, when Lalo would have been around 14 years old, Juan Domingo Perón became the 29th president of Argentina, and during his presidency, he imposed tariffs on exports and restrictions on imports in an effort to make Argentina less dependent on other countries. The result? It ruined Argentina's economy, and during his second term in office, Juan Perón was overthrown in 1955. Although, interestingly enough, after 18 years in exile, he did manage to find his way into a third presidential term in 1973. But that's another video for another channel. The point is, for young Lalo, amongst many things, it meant getting a hold of North American jazz records was not that easy, and in the end he had to pay someone to smuggle them into the country, which sounds mad. I mean, imagine risking getting a fine or possible jail time, and all you want to do is listen to some cool beats. But it was that same love for jazz music that eventually took Lalo to Paris in 1952 on a music scholarship at the Paris Conservatoire. However, under Juan Perón's rule, it wasn't that simple. Lalo needed a good reason for why he wanted to study abroad. I could hear the tango playing below to mask the screams of those they were torturing. I told the inspector that my acceptance was an honor for Argentina. He stamped my exit visa and let me go. So officially, Lalo was in Paris to study classical music, which he did during the day with French composer Olivier Messiaen, but at night, you could find him in the club, jazz clubs to be more specific, where he was becoming known as a talented jazz musician. In fact, maybe a little bit too known, because he almost got deported from France for playing without a work permit. A diplomat at the Argentine embassy told me to play a recital attended by the French Minister of Education. Afterward, the minister gave me a card to see the Minister of Labour, who granted me a work permit. And it's a good thing he didn't get deported, because he went on to represent Argentina at the International Jazz Festival in Paris in 1955 along with Astor Piazzolla. And then a year after that, in 1956, Lalo returned by his own choice to Argentina. And even though Argentina was now free from Juan Perón's regime, dude still had to tell his parents he wanted to be a jazz musician. They feared I wouldn't be able to earn a living, which in fairness would have been a justified concern. To make a livable wage from arts has never been easy, and at that time jazz wouldn't have been too popular in Argentina, largely due to the former restrictions from the previous government. And with Lalo coming from a classical musical family, pursuing that probably would have been a much safer route. But despite that, Lalo still formed his own 16-piece jazz band, which went on to become part of a weekly TV show in Buenos Aires. And he also managed to score some other film and television work as well. Then perhaps one of the most pivotal moments in Lalo Schifrin's career happened when Dizzy Gillespie performed a concert in Buenos Aires in 1956, and Lalo was invited to perform for him at the reception. It was this meeting that led to Dizzy asking Lalo to come to the United States, and while Lalo was waiting for his green card, Dizzy also asked him to write some music, and that composition became the orchestral jazz suite Gillespiana, which was recorded and released in 1960. And with that release, after 8 years of playing jazz, Lalo became an overnight sensation. Now this is all great of course, but Lalo's real goal was to compose music for movies. And after touring with Dizzy and Silent of Verve Records, Lalo eventually met an MGM board member by the name of Arnold Maxim, who recommended him to compose for the 1964, sort of based on a true story movie, Rhino. And although this wasn't Lalo's very first assignment, it did effectively mark the start of his career in film and television music composition, a career that included The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Cool Hand Luke, Bullitt, Kelly's Heroes, Dirty Harry, and probably his most well-known work, Mission Impossible. Now with Mission Impossible, Lalo was told by the creator of the show, Bruce Geller, that he wanted something that people would hear and go, "Oh, Mission Impossible is on," and run to the living room. Lalo's response was, "I knew what I had to write. I understood. It had to be like a call to the viewers to watch. What I needed to compose was like a logo for Mission Impossible." I think it's safe to say he did that, even though he didn't have much time to write the theme that was being referred to at the time as Burning Fuse. I sat at my desk and wrote that theme in exactly 1.5 minutes. It was not inspiration, it was a need to do it. It was my own little Mission Impossible. The whole thing, including the chorus, the bongos, everything you hear, took me maybe 3 minutes. I was creating sounds of impossible missions and making them swing. I didn't know it was going to be so successful. After that, Lalo went on to compose one of my favorite movie scores ever, Enter the Dragon. The 1973 martial arts film starring Bruce Lee. When Bruce and Lalo were together, Bruce asked Lalo what type of exercise he does, to which Lalo replied, "Tennis." Bruce said, "You have to do martial arts." He then went to Lalo's house, got him to set up a dojo and gave him free lessons. And although Bruce wasn't there all the time, under Master Lee's guidance, Lalo Schifrin became a black belt in Jeet Kune Do in his 40s. Lalo Schifrin continued to work in film and television music, winning a total of 19 awards and a further 36 nominations, including 5 BMI Awards, 4 Grammys, 2 Online Film and Television Awards, 2 Lifetime Achievement Awards, a Latin Grammy, an Austin Fantastic Jury Prize, an Anton Garcia Abril Award, a Maverick Tribute Award, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and an honorary Oscar that was presented to him by Clint Eastwood.
It is a mission accomplished.
Later in his career, 1998 heard Lalo in the Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker buddy action comedy Rush Hour. And 2004 heard him on the stealth action video game Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow. Which ended up being his last original composition for a media product. However, 2004 was not the last original music from Lalo. He continued to perform concerts like the Festival du Film Jules Verne Aventure in 2007 and composed orchestral pieces, with his last one being Viva la Libertad with Rod Shapeman. It premiered in April 2025 at the National Auditorium of the Palacio Libertad in Buenos Aires, and then a few months later, on the 26th of June 2025 in Los Angeles, California, Lalo Schifrin passed away at the age of 93. The legacy that Lalo Schifrin left behind is immense, a body of work that has inspired generations of musicians all over the world. Early 2000s new metal fans might recognize the Mission Impossible theme from Take a Look Around by Limp Bizkit. Hip-hop fans from the same era might recognize Anita, that was sampled for Big Pun's 100%. And also from Mission Impossible, the classic Portishead song Sour Times samples the Noob Incident. And there are loads more examples of musicians that sampled Lalo Schifrin, and many examples of musicians that revered him, like Michael Giacchino, who worked on the Fantastic Four, Lightyear, and the Spider-Man movies. On meeting Lalo to discuss working on Mission Impossible 3, he said, "I remember calling Lalo and asking if we could meet for lunch, and I was very nervous. I felt like someone asking a father if I can marry their daughter or something. And he said, just have fun with it, and I did." Another legendary musician, Hans Zimmer, who composed for the Dark Knight trilogy, the Dune movies, and the Mr. Beast TV series. When asked about Lalo, he said, "Without Lalo Schifrin, the modern action score wouldn't exist." His music was more than just notes. It represented the oppressions he lived under and the freedoms he sought. From smuggling in jazz records under Juan Perón's regime, to the fusions of jazz and classical that he found a way to give to the world. His compositions became a testament to the human ability to move beyond the barriers imposed by others. And even without words, his music connected with so many of us for a million different reasons. Whether it was the suspense of a spy theme or a soulful jazz improvisation, it spoke the universal language of emotions. And there are lessons to be learned from Lalo's story, like always pursue the things you're passionate about, even when the path isn't an easy one. Don't be afraid to learn something new at any age, and perhaps most importantly, never stand in the way of other people's art. As Lalo was influenced by the greats before him, the greats now are influenced by Lalo. Lalo Schifrin didn't just compose soundtracks, he composed a legacy of defiance, creativity, and imagination. His music continues to resonate, and his artistic freedom continues to live on, letting us know that no mission is truly impossible.